you raise your hand? What steps you'll follow in carrying out that objective? How will it be done? Who will do it? When will it be done? You keep asking yourself, if you get stuck, what's next? You need to make a diagram, help you visualize the steps. Clearly state the reasons for selecting the methods. Now, if you relied on, say, for example, in proactive, you reach over into the bookcase and take out treatment and improvement protocol, number 28, CSAP, or one of the CSAP tomes on prevention. You already have, or you have some sort of training manual. You have Bachman's social learning curriculum. Say, well, this is what Bachman suggested in his 10-week drug prevention curriculum. You lay it out. In week 1, we're going to cover this topic. In week 2, we'll cover this topic. Here you would address steps to ensure your cultural competency of the method. You ask your consumers to convene and suggest methods that are going to be appropriate for the age, etc. This is critical. How will participants be recruited and retained? Do you have any leverage working with a child welfare agency or the court system? Do you have any leverage at all? I love the reviewer that I recruit from the drug program in East LA, El Barrio, East LA. He says, you know, Mike, I never need to hire a guy to pick stuff in the agency. And I say, well, how does that work? What do you mean you never need to hire somebody? He says, yeah, the agency van breaks down, you can't afford it, it's expensive, transmission breaks down, you can't afford it. I call up the judge. I say, hey, Judge, look, I just found out it costs $500 to fix the agency van. I'm in a jam here. We need that van to get folks around. He says, okay, hang on a line, I'm going to look, see what we got here. This one guy here, he said something about mechanics. I'm going to send him right over this afternoon. It's either that or 5 years in San Quentin. The plumber, same thing. Hire a plumber. Now, next section. How many times applicants, as we move on to evaluation, will just kind of skip over and presume that all the evaluation requirements are the same. For example, doing community-initiated interventions, tweak, CSAP grant announcement, and we'll get applications from organizations that think that this is a service grant, very complex research design is required by the announcement in terms of the evaluation, typically worth as many as 40 points, and they'll just get on scores. Those applications will just get on scores, because there is basically no research design included in their application. They've not invited very early on in their thinking process and their assessment process an evaluator to the table, sit down, look at the announcement, see if it's something that they could actually possibly even pull off. Take some basic understanding of evaluation concepts and terminology. My sister agency, HRSA, spent a lot of time out in the community doing PA, having a lot of community-based HIV providers. They have created 2 tomes on evaluation, which I've provided to you as part of your agency's program development file. And on the right-hand side of your package will be the you want to develop a long-term relationship with an evaluator. You don't need one-shot deals. It's your agency's credibility that's on the line here. You invite somebody to the table you don't know. I don't care how many citations they have, peer-reviewed journals they have. You don't want someone who doesn't share your agency's vision, who is not passionately committed to your agency's work. what would happen if they've got 25,000 citations, but they've got so much work going on, and they say, yeah, sure, I'll help you out. And it's 6 weeks into this 8-week window, you get a half-page fax. Sorry, but this is just some extra work. I cannot handle that. But maybe you can find somebody else to help you out. Then, and you got 2 weeks left, it's just too late. It's just too late. Yes?
Where do you begin to find an evaluator?
Where would you begin to find an evaluator? Well, we got a few evaluators here. We could do a little network maybe afterwards. But the first thing, actually, that I would do, look on our website, 2 years of existing grantees. Okay, let's say which state is one? New Hampshire. There will probably be, I'm sure, a number of existing grantees from New Hampshire on that website, on the SAMHSA website. You call them up. You say, look, we're thinking of applying for SAMHSA grant. What experience do you have with your evaluator who's actually doing the work, doing the performance? They follow through? Are they there? Are they committed? Certainly you want an evaluator with community-based experience, the love for community work, not just going to be in and out, never see the person again. So I would at least start there. Network, universities, of course. But again, you're getting people that way cold, and really, you want to make clear in that first meeting that, yes, they need access to your target population, but you don't want your community used either. You don't want them hurt. That's absolutely the most important thing you have besides your staff. Credibility of your agency. Now, if that gets damaged by an outside evaluator who's going to take advantage of that bond, absolutely going to want that to happen. So you want to be careful about any relationship. You want to make sure that, hey, if you're going to help us out, this is not just for grants that we're going to be doing, or grant that we're going to be doing 8 weeks from now. We need somebody who's going to be helping us out for the long term, for a long haul. It's going to be down and dirty with us. You've got some community-based experience. Now that's absolutely key. Bring the evaluation to the table early in the grant process. Yes? Price tag. Evaluators? I just heard 5 to 10% off the top. Anybody else? Cheaper? Yes.
What about internal evaluation?
Sure, absolutely. You got a large enough agency, and you can put an evaluator on the table, to the table from your agency on sort of consulting basis or on payroll. Work in a university, you got it's built into that. Absolutely. There's nothing in the GFA that says you have to be only an external evaluator. Document why that makes sense, and that it's going to be an objective evaluation.
Quality assurance personnel.
Quality assurance personnel. Depends on, their credentials. They'll look at the CV. CVs in review get very intense scrutiny. And if you say that this person can be your evaluator, they're going to look for, in the CV, what this person has evaluated, what publication. I mean, they don't necessarily have to be peer reviewed, but they've been involved in, the best situation you want to position yourself in is that they've been involved in SAMHSA review, evaluating SAMHSA projects. That would be absolute best. Or maybe some state foundation, Robert E. Johnson Foundation evaluations. If you're going for some of the research-oriented, it depends. All of this depends what type of announcement you're going for. For research-oriented announcements, clearly you're going to want to bring a PhD level evaluator to the table to write those that require a whole statistical analysis, comparison to traditional, almost black box research design. So, anyway, okay. And have the evaluator review the program plan to ensure that all your objectives are measurable. Then put a list of questions to go over with the evaluator, include what type of evaluation design that they require, what information is needed to conduct the evaluation, what data collection instruments. Again, you'd want to have some knowledge of those instruments for yourself, and I would refer you to Burroughs guide, and how the data is collected. What additional staff will be needed to conduct the evaluation in terms of people who will go out and say, interview people, how you do these kinds of telephone interviews and knock on people's doors. People come back to the agency after the program is over and find out how they're doing, fill out questionnaires, whatever. And how will we ensure that the design is culturally competent? And I would add that many of these instruments have fairly significant literature, but it's always good when you reference the instrument in the body of your narrative, in your section. You want to include that literature. You don't have to, and it's always a mistake, just box in the literature review to the section called literature review. It's always good to include citations, and in particular on this issue, the instrumentation. Doing the addiction severity index. Well, what's the literature on the addiction severity index in terms of reliability and validity? Major issues you want to address in discussing the instrument, and talk about the literature that you discovered. You've done your literature review at the APA website, and you can add a paragraph there, because that's going to be brought up. They find that you're using some instrument that they've never heard. We bring evaluators to the table. They're sitting at the table and they know these instruments. And they'll say, well, what's this one all about? I've never heard of it. What is this? I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe this. You got no basis in the literature. It's not used anywhere else. And then the Gifford data will be additional questions that we would like to have added to any instrument that is using the addiction severity index. Well, here's 25 more other questions we'd like to gather answers to. The dissemination plan, very easy. Finally, we come to the section of your proposal that's easy to write. We've got 3 sections that are a nightmare, and then we've got a season. Finally. Okay. How do we disseminate the results of your project in your evaluation plan? Well, you create a newsletter, and now the latest thing with e-newsletters, you say you're going to go to conferences, you put money in the budget to go to conferences at APHA, you're going to go and do peer-reviewed journal articles, you're going to create a manual about your program, you're going to do a roadshow display, you're going to produce audiovisual materials possibly. You don't have to do all of these things, you can just select them all. You can invite agencies to come to your agency, put the word out, the newsletter. We would love to have you come visit our program. We're the only agency in the state that's treating pregnant addicts. We provide them with life skills. We provide them with budgeting skills to get them off drugs, to do parenting skills. And you really announce to the whole community that you're inviting people to come visit, say, every Tuesday afternoon. Websites and listservs that you might create to educate the community about your program. And then what you can do is go in your state, do workshops. Okay, the final section. Now, management plan. You want to sell your organization's capability. Its uniqueness, its niche. Every agency has its niche. We're the only culturally competent provider. Chelsea neighborhood, Boston. in the community. We've been providing services to kids for 50 years. Our church, located at its present position for the past 125 years, a spiritual cornerstone of our community. So you want to lay out your agency's niche very early on in this section of the map, because you want to carve that thing out. Say, hey, we're really the only ones who do this. In a rural area, in a 500 square mile area of northern New Hampshire, we're the only drug treatment provider. We're the only mental health provider. You want to detail the roles and responsibilities of key staff and show the staff is further qualified, especially the person listed as the project director. You want to detail the amount of time the person will spend on the project. And as I said, I'm going to leave these up. Now, the first thing that you need to do in regard to this issue is a PERT chart, time task chart. Now, in a time task chart, type in the word task, left-hand column, the word time. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can do this either three of them, either year 1, or you can do years 1 through 3 and just have 0 to 6 months, 6 to 12, all 36 months, typically either 3 or 6, something like 5. And then, if you got the check in the mail tomorrow, you go home, there's a check in the mail, and then you say, oh my God, now what? Well, you have no staff today, you got no space, and you got to think about all these issues in terms of implementation, operational. How do you operationalize the project? You've got to hire staff, you've got to find space, you've got to train the staff, we've got to go out and get the curriculum, recruit participants, we've got to provide treatment ongoing. Of course, those are the X's all across. These can be bars as well. I just took X's as an example. You don't have to use X's. In-service training, these are just examples. Create an aftercare group or support group. Develop training manuals. And you can go to APHA conference, disseminate results. So you want to lay out major tasks, major activities, and the months that they will occur. You want to think about this. They get very close to, take my word for it, because the announcement says, well, we want an agency that is ready to hit the ground running, something to that effect, and can spend this money as soon as they receive it. And you say, well, it's going to be month 12 before we get around to providing service. It's going to be hiring staff. So it's really year 2 before we see any services in the community. You're going to shoot yourself in the foot. It's going to hurt your chances big time. So you don't want to spend a whole lot of time in these first few steps here. Okay. You say you're operationally ready to go. It's not going to take you more than X number of months. And then you get to that T step of providing services, that's going to happen in whatever, month 3 or whatever. So you want to spend some time thinking about that issue. Now, the other thing is the staff loading chart. Very easy. No sweat. Staff loading chart is similar. They're brother and sister. Staff loading chart, name of the project director, percent time they'll be on the project, number of days, number of hours. Name 2, let's say it's case management supervisor, casework supervisor, somebody supervisor, who knows, whatever. Name 2 in your scheme of things, in your proposal of the people who will be working in your project. Well, what are they going to be doing with their time? Administration? Are they going to be training, evaluating, disseminating, providing clinical work? Are they going to be the psychiatrist, the person's a psychiatrist? Golf course over here, whatever it is. So you got to lay it out. They want to see. So what are they going to be doing with their time? You say, you say you need casework supervisors. Are they running around on 6 different other grants? And they're really only going to be 1 day a week? Again, this will get very close scrutiny. Staff voting time. And you can have one, I just give you names, I name one here, name two, you can file staff. You want to put staff, what is the percent time of the project? I'll leave this up, and they want to copy it. Very easy. All right. Now, you want to indicate that your staff is reflected in the target population is multiculturally competent, multiple populations, and in addition, the job descriptions themselves. Now, it's very easy to go into your filing cabinet and pull out whole job descriptions. Yes?
Let's say that a project director be an employee of the organization that's giving the grant.
An employee of the organization?
Yes.
Currently?
Yes.
No.
No.
No, you can have a job description. You can have a job description that says that you will hire the project director. But the point is here that I'm trying to make is that you want to clearly lay out that, you want to clearly lay out that you're going to recruit someone who has some very significant knowledge. The review committee is supposed to take very close scrutiny, among everything else in your proposal, on these job descriptions. That's why I'm advising you against just pulling out one of the filing cabinets that you used some grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation that we set out 5 years ago, and you just stick it to the back of your grant. What's going to happen is you're going to say, well, yeah, they say that they're looking, to have this close relationship with the Asian community, but there's nothing in the job description that says anything about knowledge of the Asian community, bilingual, bicultural, nothing. It's just the two things are not going to match. So, yes, it means rewriting all the job descriptions for the proposal. It's a hassle. It's more work. But how badly, you still got that sign above your desk, how badly do we want this money? It's always, quickie little thing at the end, when you're running out of time, you just go into the filing cabinet. Let's go find the job descriptions for the casework. But it doesn't work with Ellen, they put very, especially regard to this issue, is your staff has a sensitivity to work with the target population that you say you have knowledge of. It's more than saying. So much about grant writing is more than saying. They want to see proof. And the proof is in the letters of support. The proof is in the job descriptions. The proof is in the resumes. You can say you're blue in the face that you're a culturally competent provider. You say it in the job description, it says it somewhere in a resume, and you require that your staff revise the resumes just for this particular announcement that you're applying for. Include, say, well, they have extensive knowledge, they're from the target community, they are lingual, bicultural, etc. Yeah, sure, it takes more time. They're not going to want to hear that they have to redo their resume. So what? That. Yeah.
I would just think it would be helpful also to have letters of support from community members, not just other agencies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, is there a question? Yes.
Yeah, I was not sure I was interesting. Food those in our morning proposal?
Absolutely, yes. Required. Now, if you intend to use consultants, indicate some rationale as to why you need to bring in consultants. You want to say you're instead of developing an agency infrastructure of personnel who are going to be with the agency to actually do this. You want to say, well, the consultants are going to figure all this out for us, and we will not have any infrastructure once they're done. They're just going to come in. Not, so you want to say. You may want, as a little value added, say you're going to do the train-to-train thing. You're going to say, well, they're going to come in, but we're going to teach us how to do this, so we don't have to perpetually use consultants.
If you have a well-credentialed consultant
Yes.
who is willing to give you in-kind time, and you choose to list it, will that in-kind time hold as much weight as a paid consultant?
In kind, I would say that anytime you have in kind, it's a value added because it shows that the networking and the community, especially a lot of the community mental health services out, those of you who are applying for the Center for Mental Health Services announcement, it's virtually required that there be sort of this in-kind kind of stuff going on even before you apply for the grant, that you're networking, that you're going to bring these people to the table, that it's just not, a single agency. Well, youth violence, it's like basically required. You bring all these other people to the table. Community action, same thing. So, yes, absolutely, it's a value added to your proposal. Cultural competence. What is your agency's experience or track record of involvement with the community you plan to serve? In 2 paragraphs. What that experience has been. You have the expertise to work with ethnic, racial, cultural, linguistic, sexual orientation populations in your community. You have diverse community representation on your board, and it's not just sufficient just to list the board members. You want to say, in terms of their gender, ethnicity, racial, who these people are. Don't let the review committee try to figure it out. If you survey multilingualistic population, are there multilingualistic resources available in your agency? Or do you intend to purchase multilingualistic resources, including materials as I've identified here? And this issue again about community representation, I can't emphasize that enough. Instead of planning programs that have back to you, that they be brought to the table, because, the bottom line is you want your intervention to work, right? You want it to work. You want it to be effective. You want successful outcomes. And there should be objective evidence that the applicant understands the cultural aspects of the community that will contribute to the program's success. And then the bottom line is cultural competence is invariably linked to the quality of care that you provide. Internal consistency, a fundamental law, sort of like Isaac Newton's law. Now, what do I mean by internal consistency? Well, it's a fairly simple concept. Internal consistency means that if you say one thing in a proposal somewhere, in the literature, for example, it has to be said elsewhere in the proposal, including the appendices. So, for example, the plan itself must be consistent with both grant announcement, the lit review, and then community input. The objectives that you develop, they're consistent with the program model, the lit review. If CSAT says in one of its tomes, treatment improvement protocols, that there are 6, 7 parts to good programs for pregnant addicts, well, that's consistent with the literature review. And also, very critical, the amount of funding that's available. The budget and the objectives are tied together. Remember, the committee is doing a quick and dirty cost-benefit analysis. The objectives will tell them how many services will be provided, how many people, etc. The methods, they're not coming out of thin air. You're using Bachman's social learning curriculum on drug prevention. He's laid out a curriculum. They're consistent with those objectives. The evaluation design, the seeds of your evaluation design are contained within your measurable objectives. Think of the springtime, a beautiful flower. It's about ready to open. Beauty exposed in the spring. Well, think of the objectives. If they're measurable, then you have an evaluation design. If they're not, well, you've got 40 points. You got 40 points in some of these announcements. And you got 10, let's say, for your objective. That's 50. If you've not written measurable objectives, it's going back to this idea of the dominoes. Boom, 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 boom. What will you get? You'll get a letter that says your application is unscored. Scored so low that we created this new government gobbledygook term, unscored. It means that it's not even on the map because you've lost 50 points because you simply did not write measurable objectives. You said something like, we want to reduce drug abuse. Well, to how many kids? Over what time? And what are you measuring? Well, if you say, well, what do you like to do? Write a pop in the social learning curriculum over the grant period, and after the 3-year period, delay early onset of alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs by whatever. So these two sections, critically tied together, have to be consistent with each other. The management plan, well, that's consistent with your objective. CSAT's tome on whatever it is. President Adams said you need a casework supervisor. You decide to ask consult, you need this, that, and the other things. Well, the management plan absolutely cannot be made in thin air. It's based on what? Your objectives. They're very, again, very complicated, of course. And the management plan is consistent with also what? The methods. And the CVs and the job descriptions have to be consistent with what we've said up here in the management plan. You've said, oh, well, all the staff in the narrative, highly qualified. Highly qualified. But if you went to the fallback position because you ran out of time and just went to the filing cabinet and dragged up some old resumes, old job descriptions, didn't write them for this particular announcement, what's going to happen is you're going to blow the internal consistency of your management plan. So basically the bottom line is that the whole thing has to flow together. The data you use. If, for example, you say you're going to do a project for kids from 6 to 10. You say, well, I can't find data on kids 6 to 10. I can find data on kids 12 to 18. That's great. The committee will say, so what? We want to find data about kids 6 to 10. It's not internally consistent. You said that your target population is X, and you provide data about Y. So everything's got to fit together. So much about grant writing is like creating puzzle out of a million little pieces and having them all form the same view. And when one little piece gets like out of, sync, then you see this inconsistency. You end up losing points. Worst case scenario, when critical components like the objectives are not measurable, and the whole thing gets blown out of the air. Yes, question.
Is there a specific number of points for each 1, 2, 3, and 4?
It depends on the announcement. Like the research-oriented announcements, is the evaluation design is worth 40 points. So that's maybe one of the first things that you take a look at when you're sketching this out in your little cheat sheet. It says, understanding the problem, 10 points. You always want to keep these points in mind when you're writing these sections. Like how much detail you need to write. Something's clearly worth 40 points, 30 Question? Curriculum vitae, just resume. Yeah. Okay, now I did this little study, like with a quick drink of water. I'll leave my board here. Why so many applications are going down the tube, so that you put up this neon sign in front of you and say, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. So we're going to hear about this now, and hopefully take my advice and steer clear of these mistakes that your colleagues across the country are doing and not getting the money. So it's the bottom line. Okay, first section of the narrative. We just haven't spent any time in the library on looking at the databases, going into the literature. View reference, quarterly reference. Literature review. Remember I talked to you, maybe you nailed down the seminal work. Maybe not, but you've not included the last 5 years. So, hold on one second. No scientific evidence of effectiveness. Some of the CMHS announcements they want to look at scientific evidence. What's the evidence that this particular program design works? You may have this beautiful model that you love, you created yourself, but there's no evidence, there's no peer-reviewed journal articles. Well, I'm telling you, we see a lot of that, and they don't get funding. Application statement of need contains only national data. We talked about that. Rationale for choosing the target calculation is missing entirely. Not said why. And moving on to section 2 of your narrative, application goals and objectives are unclear, confusing, or missing entirely. Major faux pas here. Then you have no proposal. Application project plan not state of the art. Project methods are not well detailed. The committee has to sort of figure out how you can get to this objective of providing inpatient treatment. What exactly is going to happen? You're going to be in group all week? You're going to be an individual? You're going to be an individual group? You're going to be in a support group? What exactly how are you going to get to that objective? Project methods are inappropriately matched to the goals of the DFA. Application includes no evidence of participatory planning. Again, planning in a vacuum. Hired a third party to write the grant, not even read the grant, not even made the senior grant, maybe you faxed the signature of the executive director over. That's it. And then telling them, committees will they zoom right in on that and keep the applications up like crazy, where they see that there's no evidence for planning by your target population. Does not address cultural, ethnic, sexual orientation, or disability issues at all. Major faux pas for our funding source. Evaluation section. Now, some of this stuff is taken from some of the more research-oriented announcements of your service provider. You can look at the stuff that may not apply to you directly, but you are applying for a research project from us. You want to take this very seriously. And also, you want to, in many cases, in addition to bringing an evaluator to the table, bring a statistician, we do bring both